Hey guys, this is Mikko. So last week I went to Pori to visit my sister, and in the train I noticed that I didn't have my USB-C cord with me. So I had this whole weekend ahead of me and I couldn't paint in the train. And if you have seen my videos before, you know that I love painting in train. It's just one of my favorite things to do in life. So instead of letting that whole glorious train trip go to waste, I took out my phone and I started doing this illustration in PROCREATE Pocket. This is just one of the many uses for PROCREATE Pocket, and I'm going to go into those in this video. The most obvious one is that your phone is always with you, so you have your painting tools pretty much everywhere. When I was younger, this would have been amazing because I was carrying around watercolors with me, just literally everywhere I went, and you can imagine that that is a lot of equipment. But even today, there are many places where I want to paint, but I can't take my iPad with me. For example, there is this one gallery in Helsinki that doesn't allow me to carry my iPad with me, but I get inspired by the paintings there so often that I just have my PROCREATE Pocket with me, and there I can quickly do a sketch with my thumb in front of a painting, or just take notes of the colors that I see in the painting using the camera, and then I make custom palettes. I use PROCREATE Pocket for a lot of my palettes that I make. It's usually in a situation where there isn't enough time to do like a full painting, but there is still enough time to get something done. This could be literally in a queue when you're waiting in line to somewhere. You can create a palette in that time frame if you just use the time efficiently. It's just a matter of like taking out the phone and getting to work. So I love PROCREATE Pocket in these sort of situations. And iPad doesn't really replace PROCREATE Pocket in that sense. Another way of working that I use quite a lot is I start on the phone and then I just switch to the iPad version when I want to add more detail and work quicker doing the details, because those are kind of slower to do on the PROCREATE Pocket version because you need to zoom in all the time and that takes time. So I'm not saying that these are replacements for one another, but if you have PROCREATE, I suggest using the phone version as well, because there are things that you can do on the phone in situations where iPad just isn't the optimal way to get work done. There are a lot of questions about what equipment specifically I use, and most of those are about the screen size of iPad Pro, whether you use the bigger or smaller screen. I use the bigger screen for my work, but that's just my personal choice, and I'm going to explain the reason what you should think about for yourself when you decide your iPad size, because I am the type of person that is not most people, that when I travel around, I take all of my stuff with me. I could be going out on a painting trip to a coffee shop and I will have my Switch with me, I will have my iPad with me, probably some filming gear so that I can make YouTube videos. It's just like a whole lot of things to carry around, like you probably saw in my plein air video. That's normal for me. If that is not you and you want to kind of like minimize the stuff that you're carrying around, I would recommend the smaller screen. Like, it's not going to make any difference to the paintings that you make, honestly. The biggest factor in deciding between the bigger screen and the smaller screen of iPad is that what screen size are you honestly comfortable carrying around with you everywhere? Because it doesn't make sense to put all this money into the bigger screen if you leave it at home. Then you would have benefited more from getting the smaller screen. Because if you're not carrying around your painting tools everywhere with you, then they are useless. You are not gonna develop as an artist if you are not carrying around all of your working tools, because you are going to need every single minute out of the day that you can to dedicate to your painting and creativity. Otherwise, it's going to be really slow to grow as an artist and develop those sort of technical skills. So PROCREATE Pocket is only one addition to all of this, because your phone is always with you, and I found many situations where just having that extra option of like getting a quick color study done on the phone is the only thing that I can do. And later when I get home or into a situation where I can paint on the iPad, in those situations I really thank myself for having that palette ready that I can use, or having a block-in sketch of something that I can already start working on. It just makes all the difference in how fun it is to paint when you have something to start from. Also, when it comes to equipment, don't let that be an excuse for you not to be creative. I'm sure that some people will comment on this video and ask, what is this pen that you are using in the train? That pen is garbage. I'm not going to recommend it, and that company doesn't deserve it. It's not a great pen. Use your thumbs. Honestly, I think thumbs are better. It was only a small moment in the train that I was able to use this pen because the battery runs out super quickly, and the rest of the trip I used my thumbs. After I came from Pori, I started having this fever and I spent the entire day in bed, and just getting to this table and doing another painting video, it just seems like impossible, and it seemed like that's not healthy to push myself that way. So I was in the bed and I was doing this illustration with my thumbs, only with my thumbs, not with this pen at all. So most of the illustration was done this way, and I think in that situation, if I didn't have this option of using the phone as an illustration tool, this illustration just wouldn't have been made. I had the option of just wasting the entire day in bed, but I kept thinking that if I make this as a free wallpaper to share on my Twitter, then I can do something nice for people, and that distracted me enough so that I didn't have to think about how miserable it is to stay in bed all day and get nothing done, because I love illustrating. I hope all of you know this already, but doing an illustration on a smaller screen or a phone screen doesn't mean that the illustration is less in value. I've done some pretty awful paintings using a 3,000 euro PC and a super expensive Cintiq, and I've done some of my favorite illustrations on the phone. It doesn't matter what equipment you're using, it just seems absurd to me that some people put this value on making certain kind of art on expensive equipment as something that produces better art. This obviously doesn't go that way. It's the same as in traditional art. It doesn't matter if you have a super expensive brush. Your painting skills aren't going to be any different, so it doesn't matter. These are just different ways for you to be creative in different situations. I have to say that this illustration in particular, it's easier to do with my thumbs because every brushstroke or thumb swipe, it doesn't have to be perfect, as I can adjust the quick shape after the stroke is done. So that's why I was able to get these clean lines without any hassle. In summary, these are just tools. I wonder sometimes if writers get asked what type of keyboards they're using to write their novels. This is the same type of silliness. When I was working during my school years in night shifts in these restaurants and I was washing dishes, I had this sort of like small stash of post-it notes, and when people were going out on a smoke break, I was drawing those post-it notes, and I didn't have a scanner back then, so I used a cheap digital camera to import those drawings into Open Canvas. And no, I didn't afford Photoshop license back then either. And I didn't complain about it, because obviously I would have liked to have the most expensive, best tools possible, but I was still able to be creative, and that was still enough for me. I'm going to make a wild prediction here and say that you probably already have the tools that you need to be creative. It's just up to you to use them. It's my belief that your creativity doesn't care how the work gets made. It just wants that work to exist, and the only way that can happen is through you. So go out there and do the work. I'm Mikko, and I'll see you in the next video.